One thing I notice in sales call with clients is when we're talking about UGC, we're talking about influencers or affiliates. Sometimes there can be a cross of expectations of what they're looking for, and maybe not a clear division on like what is an influencer, what is UGC, what is an affiliate, and how are they different that way. Let's just kind of go one at a time, I guess. From an affiliate and influencer differentiator, how would you see those as different?
I think it's a really interesting one. And I think with a lot of things in creative world, we use the same words for different things a lot. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot, just even the word messaging or angles, like different people use them differently. And I feel this is one of those terminologies that there isn't a lot of consistency across the industry. But for me, I would say affiliates is kind of like synonymous with brand ambassadors, I would say. So if you give out, as a brand, if you give out affiliate links to people, like your customers, for example, you might send them an affiliate link and say, hey, like, would love it if you posted a review on your social media. Here's an affiliate link. And then if anybody buys from your affiliate link, you'll get some money back. To me, that's kind of the same as a brand ambassador. And I would say that is probably, or it is a really great strategy for getting raving fans, making use of your existing customer base, those types of strategies. Whereas influencer, I would say, is a bit more of a defined person. That's a really strange, like slow way of saying it. But, to be an influencer, even if you're a nano influencer, you've got to have a certain level of influence over people. And what does influence kind of be defined as? Well, that's followers and engagement. So that's a bit more clear cut in terms of you can't be an influencer if you have an Instagram account with 2 posts and like 3 followers, like, because you don't have much influence, you don't have much clout, you don't have the follow account or the engagement to be able to say, hey, I can influence a market or a group of people to purchase your product, Mr. Brand. So I'd say that's probably the way I would define the difference between the two. But I know a lot of people would sort of say different. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think part of it too is just kind of overall buy-in or payoff for the person you're working with, the influencer or the affiliate. So affiliates generally are making commission per sale, right? So for them, it could be perceived that there is a much more beneficial impact for them if they actually drive purchases, where influencer is influencing people and ideally they're driving purchases, but more often than not, they will get paid a flat rate for reach or for impressions or for their overall impact as an influencer. And their performance is tied less to bottom line or just overall sales that are coming in the door that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So their payment is kind of just to be a person that has the followers
Yeah.
and the engaging follower count. And I think also, well, I guess we'll talk about UGC as well in a minute, which is maybe another, well, it is definitely another point of differentiation is you would expect an influencer to be able to construct content in a way that does drive engagement or does, show a positive light on whatever product that they're showing. Whereas an affiliate, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to know exactly how to create content that gets either engagement or sales.
Mhm.
With an influencer, I would say there's probably a more implicit expectation that they will know how to create engaging content. They will know what kind of transitions work. They will know to make the edits engaging, interesting, to keep people watching. Whereas an affiliate, you can absolutely have affiliates who will know all of those things, and they are probably the more successful affiliates because they do get paid per transaction. But I think there's perhaps, an important expectation difference between those two things as well.
Yeah, and I think affiliates, they can know how to make content. When I think of affiliates, I either think of like YouTubers that have affiliate links in their bio or in their description, or like bloggers. And so they have a very specific platform they know how to make content for. I think influencers have a very specific voice and personality that they craft in their content. And then going into the UGC side, user generated content or actor generated content, as some people call it, they more often than not don't have a following. So them posting content on their channel, on their page, doesn't really move the needle that much for a brand. It's getting content that is going to drive sales through paid acquisition. So an influencer could make UGC. It's kind of like exceptions here. They could make UGC, but when you're briefing an influencer, it's less about do this exactly this way at exactly this time, and more about make content that is native to your voice, to your audience that they know, like, and trust.
Right.
And whereas a UGC creator probably doesn't have a defined voice or audience or personality type, and they are more about fitting a brief versus fitting their own style, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the UGC or AGC, actor generated content, as you mentioned there, is like, you don't need to have a big following because we're paying for eyeballs. That's the point with paid content. You're paying for the eyeballs. So it doesn't matter if the content creator in that situation doesn't have a following because you don't need them to. Whereas influencers, they can naturally charge more because of the large following, because of the reach that they can give you without having to spend advertising dollars. So I think that's actually a really kind of interesting point of comparison for brands who are considering both, either, all of it, to consider is the cost of getting that content out there. Are you going to pay in ad dollars, or are you going to pay in influencer or influenceable eyeballs?
And I think the type of product you have can have an impact on what you need. So knowing the difference between the three or how they may overlap is very beneficial, because recently I was in the sales process with a client, and their product type is something that you have to use ideally daily. And then over the course of a month, 2 months, 3 months, you're going to see improved performance with your output. And this was like a golf item, right? So it's helping improve your golf swing. And one thing that they mentioned is it comes off as very fake and inauthentic if it's just a person posting one single time about this product, because they haven't really seen any net gain in the distance they're swinging or in the accuracy or anything like that. So for them, based on that, the affiliate model would likely work best, because they need somebody that's going to be bought in to be posting about this frequently, or at least more than one time over the span of a couple months. Whereas if you're having to pay an influencer to make content, they're going to have to pay for every post. And UGC probably completely out of the question, because this is somebody that likely doesn't even know golf that's going to be talking about the product. Influencer would at least know golf and have an impact in golf, but affiliate is really going to have buy-in to keep talking about the product with their audience.
It's a really great example, actually, with that type of product and looking at it across the three. And there are some really incredible agencies out there that are entirely focused on building these types of communities for brand, for really consistent delivery of creative. And I think a lot of people perhaps shortchange themselves with their influencer strategy, because they tend to, I guess, treat it as a one-off campaign rather than a channel. So they might say, right, this influencer, X amount of following, I'm going to pay them X amount of dollars for this video, done, like one and done. Well, yeah, that's going to be a one-off impact. And if it was one video that wasn't particularly great, or if the algorithm was just sluggish that day, like, that's really risky in terms of the investment. But actually, if you can create some kind of, and this is maybe where the definitions get a bit confusing, but if you can create some kind of program where you're engaging your network of ambassadors or affiliates or influencers to consistently engage with you, and actually treat that as a channel rather than a campaign, it's going to drastically change the output. And I think, to go with that example, is that product of helping with golf skills is a really great example of that, because you can't get the same level of impact with a one and done influencer campaign as you can if you're showing somebody kind of progress through different skills, especially if the outcome you're selling to your end customer is an improvement in their own golf skills. You need to be able to show that. But influencers with one-off campaigns is not going to have that same level of engagement, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And we're starting out talking with affiliates, influencers, UGC, three overlapping but also different models of partnership with creators. So there's definitely some really good conversation that could be had around each. And I think our focus today is going to be primarily on that UGC piece. And in coming episodes, we'll really drill down on influencer and then on affiliate as well. And UGC, I think, is something that has been just ingrained within paid media as a type of content to use, right? And it's understood that sending products to people for them to then quickly review, create content around, maybe it's a social media trend, maybe it's just when it started out an unboxing and that type of thing, is a path, right? The thing that agencies are responsible for, or brands have to do if they don't hire an agency, is be able to find the right UGC creators, to be able to find the right people that not only match their brand, but also put out good creative, have a good voice, and are good to work with. And being able to find those people is just the start of the overall process. But for us has been something that we've really been kind of focusing on, what platforms, what channels, what methods can we do to recruit UGC creators to bring into the network? From your perspective, I know there's various ones that we've used, but have you really resonated on any specific platforms or channels that have been kind of the biggest impactor when it comes to sourcing creators that way?
No, not really. I mean, prior to coming in and working with you, I had not really done any UGC sourcing at all. So you're way kind of more experienced with that than me. So ask yourself that question.
Well, I would say Twitter, definitely a hotbed for UGC creators. And what I've actually heard from UGC creators when they're starting out, because circa 2015 to 19, Cat How, when you were starting an agency, you took a course and there were certain things you were told you have to do. When you're starting UGC and maybe you take a course, one of the things that they understand is you have to have a Twitter profile. You have to be putting out stuff on Twitter. You have to be trying to find opportunities that way. So Twitter has been a great place for us, right? To be able to put out posts of the specific demographic, age, gender, location, business type that we're looking for. Backstage is another one.
Sorry, just before you move on from Twitter. So are there any specific, what's your general outreach? It's not really outreach, is it there? But you mentioned a few things that you would put in your post. So you mentioned, the kind of demographic that you're looking for, perhaps the kind of niche that you're looking to find a content creator for. Are there any, how do content creators find it? Are there specific hashtags that you'd recommend people use? What would you suggest to anybody trying to use Twitter as a strategy for finding content creators?
Yeah, that's a good question. The first thing that I would recommend is to be a little proactive with it and find a UGC creator that posts, and let's say, they generally get at least 5 to 10 to 20 likes per post that they're putting on Twitter. More often than not, a UGC creator follows a lot of other UGC creators and is followed by a lot of other UGC creators as well. So the first thing that I started doing with Twitter was actually finding a few UGC creators and then mass following or following accounts that they follow, so I can start to get some reach with my post to where I know that one will see it or multiple will see it. And then when I post on Twitter, I'll be very specific. I'm looking for female UGC creators aged 25 to 35, living in the United States with experience in beauty and skincare products, right? And I may tag one or two UGC creators in the comments just to kind of kick things off. But in the actual post, I'll say, please comment if you have experience with your portfolio. And similar to what you see with LinkedIn, with the comment me for this free tool, when one UGC creator starts commenting on the post, it's going to hit their network, and other UGC creators within their network are going to start posting and commenting on it as well, so that they can ultimately get an opportunity to do it that way.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super helpful. Yeah.
And then, so Backstage is another great platform. Backstage is a little bit different because Backstage is for finding actors, for finding a lot of different things within movie development or just film now. But actors, and more often than not, it is people that haven't had their break yet. So it's people that have training for acting. It's people that have been on stage, they've been in front of camera, and there's not going to be that question of do they perform authentically in front of camera, right? Your percentage odds of getting someone good in front of camera is a lot higher. So you can look at putting up posts on Backstage to be able to source out people in the regions, in the genders, the demographics, whatever you're looking for that way as well.
Nice. I think
And
that's
then
a
the
good one.
last
And
one that I would
I
add to
remember
it,
way back when
outside of like a
UGC
specific
started becoming a
UGC
thing.
platform, would be.
Oh, sorry. I think there's a lag.
We're lagging. Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say when UGC very first started to be a thing and was happening, and I was working agency then as well, and we were trying to find ways to get content creators on board and work with content creators. And someone who I worked with had a friend who was an actor but wasn't actively taking acting roles, but was always not, sorry, that's not the right way to frame it, wasn't actively in plays, films, TV, whatever, but was actively looking for acting opportunities. And she went to that person and said, hey, like, this is the way our industry is going. We're looking for people who are comfortable in front of the camera. It's kind of like acting, would you be interested in like working with us, or would you be interested in reaching out to your network? And they were really offended, like really shocked and offended to be asked that. And I think that was a really long time ago now, but the fact that there are platforms that specifically are tailored to that, I think is fantastic, because it's so important to have someone who can get in front of a camera and act authentically and kind of follow some guidelines and or a script, which I'm sure we'll go into a bit more detail in a moment, but be able to follow that without it feeling like they're following a script. So I think the fact that there are platforms like Backstage exist now, I think is really, really great. And I can see like how good, what's the word? How good the kind of people on that platform are going to be in terms of finished results that they deliver.
Yeah. It's nice to work with people that have that camera experience outside of just creating UGC. There's great UGC creators. I don't mean that in any negative way at all, but being able to be yourself on camera is not easy, right? It's very easy to get stage fright on camera. So Backstage, a great opportunity. And then the last platform that I would add, that if you're looking to be an agency that's sourcing UGC, or you are a brand that wants to go just source UGC one by one for yourself, and this is not a UGC specific platform, would be Upwork. So Upwork's great because you can actually see reviews. You can understand what people have paid for that UGC creator in the past, because there's really no price control on UGC at this point in the industry. You can understand the experience people had with working with the creator based on a star rating of 0 to 5. You can see the feedback. So it adds confidence when you're working with somebody, because you understand what that past experience has been like for whoever hired them that way. So
I like that a lot, because definitely what I've found since working with content creators is you have such a mixed experience from one content creator to another. There are some content creators that we had in our network that, kind of went MIA, even after delivering content before we'd paid them, like asking for payment details and they don't even reply. Like, those types of things are huge red flags, and you don't want to waste anybody's time, especially not kind of getting to the point where you have a content creator like that in your network who you're then, as a business, you maybe decide, hey, we're not going to work with that content creator anymore because we weren't happy with that communication delay. But by that point, you've already provided content to the client. And what if the client really loved that content creator and then requested them again? So there are all of these kind of headaches, I think, and these red flags that if you can identify them before they even happen, and I guess that's why Upwork, and perhaps even Backstage as well, is a great tool for that, because you can see in the reviews, great communication, responds quickly, and those are the types of things that we want.
Yeah, it's It's very important to, once you find a UGC creator that performs well in terms of performance in the ad account, but also just is a pleasure to work with communication wise and timeline wise, to keep them as close as possible and to really focus on using them across multiple clients if you can, or just, multiple campaigns if you're a brand doing UGC. And those red flags, right? Those are things that you have to be able to look for in the overall hiring process, because your first 1 to 2 creatives with working with a new creator is going to be like a working partnership trial, right? To understand how that goes. But it is kind of easy to see early on, just like in the hiring process for somebody in house, what might stand out to be a red flag. For me, I'll just kind of kick this off and then hand it over to you. The quality of the content that they consider their best work. And I don't just mean the quality in terms of like what's the hook in the first 3 seconds, but just the bare basics of sound quality, lighting quality, the actual cuts in between clips to understand how smooth it is or how it flows. That's going to be one early indicator. But what are some red flags that you've been kind of noticing to look out for when it comes to sourcing a new UGC creator?
That's a really good question. And I think probably the first thing I would say is, as a brand or someone looking to engage with a UGC partnership, is to define the deliverables. So the way we do it at Brighter Click is we ask the content creator to deliver us an edited video. So we need to be working with content creators who have good editing skills. So that's one big thing that I'll look out for. Is I don't want to be receiving content from content creators that, the hook is sluggish, or the pace of the video is too slow. They're not moving enough. They're not changing shots quickly enough. There's no text overlays at all, or the text overlays don't make sense. All those types of things that fall into editing. I'm always looking really carefully at those things. I think there are exceptions in that, or there are allowances, I guess I would make in that we also, as part of our process, give quite detailed instruction around what we're looking for. So, if the hook is a bit sluggish, then I know I can guide the content creator on that type of thing. If everything else is a really good fit, like if it's perfect demographic, if it's, one of the brands that we work with are breast pumps. So we need females, we need mums, we need ideally mums with small babies, because we want there to be some relevance. We might ask them to include the baby in the shot to, again, bring relevance with the end target audience. So if all of it, so it kind of depends on how specific the request is, as to what I'll think, okay, I can give them a bit more guidance on that, and I can work with them and coach them through that to get what we need. Because, and this is something I think you mentioned as well at the start, content creators are often not necessarily, marketing experts, or, direct response trained or experienced. And so I wouldn't expect a content creator necessarily to know how to create engaging or conversion optimized content. And definitely not in the same way that I would expect an influencer to know how to do that. And so that kind of, I'm skipping some steps here, but that comes down to the briefing, which we'll get to. So that will be my first thing. Red flags, choosing content creators, is just being really, really clear on what your deliverables are going to be from that content creator. If you have a fantastic video editor that is an absolute expert in this type of, heartbeat style edits, etc., then maybe the editing of the videos that you're looking at in a potential content creator's portfolio, maybe you don't need to look for that as much, because you've got an editor who's going to do it. So that's why I'd say first step is figuring out what you actually need and want from the content creator. So yeah, editing style would be one. Communication, and a huge second, like probably even more so than one, regardless of what the deliverable outcome is going to be. Are they responsive? Do they kind of, respond in the same day or next day? I think, and I've met and spoke to and engaged with loads of content creators now, and have some really fantastic relationships with some of them. And they don't do this full time. Like, they have jobs and they're doing this kind of on the side. And there's absolutely no issue with that whatsoever if they're responsive, you know? And it doesn't need to be, I want you to respond to me in an hour. Like, I won't respond to them in an hour. I'm also really busy. But, you know, one day, 2 days maximum, am I getting a response in that time? And if I'm not, that would be a bit of a red flag, because what if the client's got amends? What if things, you know, need to change? What if you've got a tight deadline? Then those content creators are perhaps not going to be the ones that are going to be able to deliver in terms of what you need.
Yeah, it's so important with the communication, because as an agency, or even let's just say as the brand, and if you're the CMO that is finding these UGC creators, you are trusting that when you send them a product, they're going to deliver the content, and not even just that it's going to be good content, but that you're just at least going to get the content back, that you're going to get a return that you can show your brand you're working with, or show the CEO within your company, that you didn't just basically send someone a free product and then they ghosted you and never heard from them. Mm-hmm. And that can happen. I mean, that can happen, and it's very unfortunate. And you have to have those kind of conversations ahead of time with clients to let them know that there are sometimes you're working with new creators that there is, you know, just the chance that something could go south, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I guess be prepared as the brand to potentially reimburse your client if that happens, because if it was your recommendation. And you know what I find really crazy, and again, got lots of content creator friends, hopefully, as I would call them, but the amount of content creators that just don't respond, it baffles me. Like, I think it's perhaps because this role or this type of work is still fairly new. I mean, it's not, but it really is if you look at the marketing industry as a whole. So I think there are a lot of people who like the idea of it and want to dabble and figure out whether it's something they want to do. So you're going to have people on all ends of the spectrum. You're going to have people who are all in full time, just creating content. They generally will have a higher per video rate, and you'll know who they are. You'll be able to see that quite easily. But it's the ones that aren't as engaged that can take you by surprise sometimes and make it really, really difficult to progress projects forward.
100%. And you brought up something there with rates, and I think this next part might be the most controversial take of the entire episode. But one thing that we're looking for during the interview process as well is usage rights. And I think the pricing landscape, or just overall landscape for UGC, is very unregulated unless you're on a specific platform that has rules for it. And there can be creators that will want, you know, pay me $100 for every 30 days you run this ad, right? As an agency, I think that is nearly impossible to be able to uphold, to pay usage rights for every creator you're working with in every account that you're working with, especially if you are not the agency that is also doing the media buying, because you would have a very difficult time keeping up with, okay, well, it's been 30 days on a calendar, but the ads only run for 15 of it. So we technically have another 15 days. And let me go into the account and prove that to you. Like, let me show you the timelines. You know what I mean? That's just very unrealistic. And I think usage rights for influencers make sense, more so because they have NIL, they have name, image, likeness, right? So they have something tied to their presence or their personality. But UGC creators, as we defined at the beginning, often do not. So for them to ask for usage rights for their content just does not make sense, honestly, to me.
Yeah, and I'll back you on that, especially with this might be the most controversial thing I say in this episode, but it makes me really grumpy. It actually makes me really grumpy, because I think, God, I don't want to sound obnoxious, but I really hope this doesn't come off as obnoxious. But as the agency with multiple clients, we've got the potential to provide a lot of work to good content creators. And we do. Like, we as an agency have a handful of content creators who we've worked with, who have performed amazingly across multiple clients. And when we get new UGC clients in, we will always go to that content creator first and say, hey, we want you to work on this. Can you? Because we know they perform, we know they're responsive, all that good stuff. And it's a partnership, right? That's the most important thing, is it's a partnership. It's not us hiring them. It's not them, like, providing, like, working for us at all. It's a partnership, and we're working in this together. And so I just find it really difficult when content creators get funny about it. Like I say, it makes me grumpy, because I just think, look, we've maybe got 10 content creators who we've worked with this month, and that might be across 7 different clients. And then, like you say, those clients might launch the ads at different times. So just in a 1 month period alone, managing the usage rights for that is absolutely impossible.
It's a full-time job.
And even if it is possible, would I want to do it? No.
Yeah.
So would I work with a content creator who has usage rights already included in the rate, unlimited usage rights? Okay, I'm going to whack another $100 on that video, but you can have unlimited usage rights. Would I rather pay an extra $100 and work with that content creator? Absolutely. Like, other than someone that's not willing to include usage rights, or who insists on charging it like per 30 days of this, that, and the other, well, I'm just not going to work with you, because that's not sustainable for me. I cannot do it. And even if I could, I don't want to.
Yeah. And I realize it's a little bit different from what I'm about to say, but it would be somewhat like a graphic designer asking for usage rights for the ads that they make, because look at it like it is. It's a graphic designer, doesn't have name, image, likeness, and they're creating content that's supposed to perform in the account, and it's going to run and bring a positive ROA. A content creator oftentimes does not have name, image, likeness. They're creating content, they're finishing an ad, and then it's going to give a positive return. If a content creator wants to get usage rights, they should focus on building their organic presence and have a voice, because you're more likely to give a Kardashian or someone usage rights for content, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were saying with like influencers, and not necessarily using them as a one and done, but content creators is a one and done in some respects, in terms of, right, this is the specific campaign, this is the brief, we've agreed a rate for this video, that's it. Like, until the next brief and until the next project. But then that next brief and that next project's got all of its own deliverables. So why should we have to continue to pay usage rights when I've paid you for this project? We've had our agreement, you've delivered your part, we've paid you. Like, that should be it. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be paying usage rights. I'm absolutely happy to pay usage rights, but I just really would love the content creators to make it easy for us to do that for them. Like, okay, you want to charge me usage rights, you can tell me, okay, I'm going to add another, like I say, $100 onto this video, and then I can decide whether I accept that or not, or if I'm going to go and find another content creator. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that I really hope content creators can figure out, because it's going to make them more attractive to agencies, and it's going to make better partnerships on both sides if they can kind of figure that out in their pricing and in their own positioning as, an individual providing services to agencies.
Yeah, because, we have the agency take on it, but it's also not totally, I don't use the term fair, but for brands, because that cost ends up rolling up to them, and creative success rate, or just, this piece of UGC, let's say you have 10 UGC ads, the belief that all 10 of them are going to perform the way that you want to, with ROA, click-through rate, cost per click, CPM, and have a long shelf life, that aren't just going to burn out after 3 or 4 days. That's very, very, very rare, right? I mean, very rare. You're good if you
have you seen some of my briefs performance though, Colby? Come on.
But it's very difficult to get 100%, a 50% success rate with creatives, right? So the impact that has for a brand, have to pay for usage rights on top of content for content that likely won't perform, just keeps stacking on cost. And brands, more often than not, don't have the thickest margins or the widest margins with their products. So it just does not make sense to be able to do that in your ad account that way.
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually reminded me of something else on my laundry list that I look for when trying to find a content creator to work with, is whether they provide the raw footage or not. and if they charge extra for that. So this is perhaps a little bit, it probably isn't more of an agency take, actually. I take that back. One of the things that I really love about working with content creators and being able to brief is to get content back and to brief strategically so that I can get a ton of content that I can then re-edit in post-production editing into different ways to tell different stories, to, you know, put different parts of USPs together to have entirely different videos with different USPs. But I can always throw in that reviews module from the first video, and then I can mix that reviews module with a demonstration green screen from the third brief, and then I can mix that with, you know, the 3 reasons why hook that we did in brief 5, because that was the best performing hook. So then getting the raw assets means that we can do in post-production any of those combinations that the data says, hey, you got to try this. So that's another one. And again, something that I, as an agency person, I'm more than happy to pay more for. Just tell me what the prices are. But if they don't offer it at all, or if they make a lot of the content creators who we kind of screened originally, Colby, when we started this bigger project, their raw usage rights were extortionately expensive. And it was sometimes that, you know, by the time they'd said 50% of the base cost to get the raw assets, and then another 50% of the base cost to get your usage rights for 1 month, you look at some of the content creators that we were looking at, and these are some of them like fairly entry. By the time you'd stacked all of that up, it was like $700, $800, $900 per video for one video, 1 30-second video. And it's just not, even as an agency, we're not going to pay that. But like brands, like you said, very likely haven't got the budget to afford that.
And if you can't, as a creator, if you're unable to tag your price with average return on ad spend in accounts you've worked with or things like that, it's very difficult to swallow $700-800 for the agency to then package and sell to the client, right? That way,
because the agency's got to make money on that as well.
Right. I mean, so, well, that's kind of like a high level of us searching for creators, right? There's of course more things we look for in the interview process. There's, you know, various things we look at from a contract basis that we have open contract wise with creators, but just kind of going along into, we have a creator, we're working with them, looking at our briefing process and the overall brief that we have, because we've built out a brief template that we use in Google Sheets to be able to send a creator when they're coming on board. The top part of that brief, you know, the basics, their name, the brand name, how to pronounce the brand name, the brand messaging USPs, the product benefits, the product focus. But then we really go into specifics on what type of content that we're going to be asking for. Are we looking at a specific TikTok trend or creative trend that's going on right now? You know, Post-it notes, 3 reasons why, previous ones that have done in the past. Or is it a completely fresh idea? And what does that look like from a shot by shot basis? Now, when it comes to building out a brief for a creator, from the template that we have, just kind of thinking on that, are there any specific parts of that overall template that you think are the most important when it comes to the early communication with a creator for a new project?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always really, really, really stress with content creators, and before I even send them that brief, is to say, hey, the most important thing is that this can't feel scripted. Yes, I'm sending you a script, but it needs to not feel scripted. So if I've said in the brief, and bam, personalized suggestions at your fingertips, if that's not something you would say, I don't want you to say it. Like, I want you to say what you would normally say, because that's going to be the most authentic experience for the viewer. So we do quite detailed briefs in terms of breakdowns, as I mentioned briefly a minute ago, like modules. We call it modular content. But the most important thing that I say to my creators is, don't follow this script if it's not like the words that you would use, but this is kind of the story we want to tell. This is the order. These are the main, like, you know, each module is either, you know, examples of modules might be the hook module. So that's going to be your first 3 seconds. And then we'll maybe go into a problem module. So it's a few lines about the problem. Then we might go into a solution module. So that's introducing the product. And then we might go into like a testimonial module where the content creator is giving a personal review on like their experience with the product. And then you might end with a CTA module, which is like, conversion or action driven call to action. But within those modules, whatever the USP is, as long as they're getting the USP across, I'm not really fussed what words they're using. It's more just about, as I said before, content creators often may not have direct response experience. So by giving them the right words to use, we're setting them up to succeed, and we're setting the content up to succeed, because it's important to kind of, to have that performance creative mindset switched on when we're putting that content together.
And to kind of echo what you were saying, we looked at the first top half of the brief, and then when we get to the actual shot by shot guide, purpose of that is really to give them guardrails of what types of shots, what angles, what backgrounds do you need, but also like what's the purpose of each shot? Is it a hook? Is
exactly.
it right? Yeah. Is it a feature of the product? And make sure that as the creative strategist, we're briefing that out so that we have in mind across multiple briefs that are going to different creators, how we could then piece together those videos and use them for mashups or collaborations, because we know what each creator is going to be doing for each section of the video. And when you're briefing it out, you said, here's the script, but don't follow the script if it sounds too canned or too templated, and it sounds fake. Where do you lean on being very direct with a creator on like, this is how you want to do it, versus allowing for them to have more creative freedom and add their own spin on it?
I feel like I'm having a existential crisis on this exact topic at the moment. So I'm a bit torn, and there's pros and cons to both. And this is a bit of a political answer, because I think it probably depends on the content creator and their level of experience. But one of the things I've been pondering quite a lot recently was, in giving quite detailed instructions to our content creators in terms of, the order, the language, the modules, we also give quite detailed instructions on the visual. So we do that intentionally to test. So sometimes we'll say, hey, can you be speaking direct to camera? Other times we'll say, can you film some B-roll of you running around the kitchen chasing your kids, and then do the voiceover, do the scripting part as a voiceover. So we're very intentional with the way we give those directions, because we want to test different things, right? Now, I still think there are tons and tons of pros to that, and I'm not going to go changing our process anytime soon. But one of the things I've been thinking about recently is, are we missing any opportunities here for content creators who are really, really good at what they do? By giving quite detailed instructions, are we missing opportunities where they could do something really cool that we'd not thought of? And the second part to that is, I think as a creative strategist or copywriter or whoever is in the role that's filling in the brief, I think you need to be quite active on social media to be able to write good briefs. So Max, I was going to not say his name then, but it's fine. Max in our team, he writes a lot of the UGC scripts now. We work on some together. He does some, I do some. But what's great about Max's scripts is he uses TikTok a lot more than I do. So when he puts scripts together with shot ideas, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I really love that. And he'll provide examples, and we quite often with the shooting descriptions, we'll put a screenshot of an example so that it's really clear like what we mean. And he'll, provide screenshots from obviously content that he's seen on his phone, or his like consumption. And I'm like, wow, that I never would have thought of that. That's so cool. But I try and limit my time on social media, because it's just a dopamine slot machine that feels like melts my brain a bit sometimes. So I think those things are all really important to take into consideration. Like, he now writes way better UGC briefs than I do, because he's a much more often social media user than I am. So that's really important as well. We don't want to be stuck in old trends. Some of them are timeless, like 3 Reasons Why is really old, but it still performs, so it's cool. Like, we can keep going with that. But the trends do change, and the last thing that we'd want to do for our clients and for our reputation is to be briefing dated content.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. It is contingent based on creator. how strict or how loose you are with the brief and how much freedom you give. I think one thing to keep in mind with it is someone has to be responsible for, I'm going to say, the marketing strategy, or more specifically, like the creative strategy. And if there is one single person that is doing the briefs and they are very loose with the guidance that they give to creators, and then they send it out to, let's say, 10 creators, and those 10 creators don't have central alignment on the goals that need to be achieved, the message that needs to be put across, then there's going to be a very wide range of creatives that come back, because each of them is in part then responsible for the messaging or the marketing or the creative strategy. And it's not being done by one central person that's thinking through things. So I think that is one of the benefits of working with a platform or a agency or a solo freelancer that does strategy and briefing for UGC, is because if you just basically throw it at the wind of do it as you may to a creator, they're responsible for everything, and performance is riding on their ability to learn your brand in probably 30 minutes to an hour or less, while they're learning the brand of other people that need UGC videos, and create something that's specific to your brand voice and product while they're doing that for other brands as well. And they likely have not run paid ads, done hands-on direct response marketing or anything in the past. They focus on content creation.
That's so true. And actually the other massive part, I think, as well around briefing is that it should fit into your overall creative strategy. So if you are a creative agency working with a brand, you should have done your research. You should be looking at behavioral insights, consumer psychology, figuring out, okay, what is it that makes people buy from this brand? And you might look through all of the research and find something like, I'm trying to think of a non-client specific example. People buy this dog food because, or people buy these dog toys because it lets them spend more time with their kids. That's an example I had on a podcast once that I always mention. And it's very specific. Like, it was mums that were buying the product, and actually these really robust dog toys meant that they didn't feel bad when their new baby came along. They could spend time with the baby and not feel guilt about ignoring the dog. So that's really specific. And if you, as a creative agency and strategy, really want to explore that angle, if you don't tell the creator that that's what you're trying to explore, there's no way in hell that they're going to pick that up and like run with that angle. They're going to get this dog toy and they're going to look at it and they're going to go, okay, what do I like about this? Oh, I like the color, or I like the fabric, or my dog went and buried it in the garden. Like, there's going to have all these, it's infinite. There's infinite amounts of differentiation of, if you just give the product and say, hey, give me some creative, that's pretty much 100% guaranteed not to fit into any of the overall creative strategy that you're trying to deliver as an agency.
Especially if that creator is not your ideal market, because they won't have they won't see the things that your ideal customer would get, and they shouldn't be expected to. This isn't a conversation to put down creators, right? It goes very similar for a graphic designer, where if the output is not what you want, go back to the brief. Is it the brief or is it the person? And it normally is the brief. 100%. It's normally that communication pathway between the person that had the idea and the person that had to execute on it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've done in our process recently is kind of kept the bones of a brief the same. Like, it will always be the same motivator or emotion that we're going after. But what we might do is just change the hook so that the two intros of the video are really different, and we've got a testing variable there. And we might change the shooting directions as well, so we get two completely different types of content. And what that's allowed us to do as part of our process, a little bit of insight here, is get a bit more efficiency. So rather than giving one brief to one creator and then the second one to another, we're able to negotiate more reasonable prices, or not reasonable, but just more efficient prices with our content creators, because they're always going to get two briefs at the same time. And it allows us to test a little bit more effectively as well, because you've not got the variable of content creator difference in there muddying the waters amongst everything else going on. So that's one of the things that we've tweaked recently. And I'm wondering if we should run another test of, I don't know how we could do this without it being unbiased, but what I was wondering is if one of our more kind of reliable or skilled or, data-backed content creators where we've always seen good performance is maybe send them a product and ask them to give us 2 videos back. 1, a scripted video, and 2, a completely unscripted video where they get to do it all from scratch. But it would probably be too hard to do. I'm just spitballing, thinking out loud now, but it would maybe have to be that we send the product and then we ask for an authentic review video first and then send them the script afterwards, because we wouldn't want the script to
bleed into
to lead them to talk about certain USPs or certain features. But that could be a really interesting thing to do as an agency or as a brand working with content creators, is try both and see what content you get back, and most importantly, run it and see what performs.
That would be really interesting. Let's look at maybe doing that in May with a test that way. Well, we have only gotten about halfway through what we were planning on talking about today. And sure. I think it's a good time to kind of cap this episode off. And what I'll do is look ahead at when we pick this conversation back up for part 2 of this, we'll be going through how do we select creators per client? So how do we match up clients with creators based on various factors, performance, demographic, how we manage communication and expectation with creators. And that's super vital for first-time partnerships with new creators. Our overall client approval process for UGC, because as a creative strategist, you're balancing internal revisions and amends, and then telling the UGC creator, this is good enough for me, I'm going to send it to the client. And then you have to come back with client revisions that way. And then overall time optimizations that we've been working on for the UGC sourcing process as well. So tune in if you're listening for episode 2. We'll be talking through all those things.
Sorry, one more thing before we wrap up this one, which is really, really, really important. So I couldn't not say it and forget it, is I would make sure if you're going to be working with content creators that you create a laundry list of must-have shots and content that you get every time. Let's say perhaps you get a new brand on board and you're doing UGC for the first time. These are the shots that I would recommend that you would always get. Like I would, construct a list of that. And that's going to vary depending on what your product is and what the USPs of that product are. But some really basic ones would be unboxing. So that's one that I would always recommend that you get. And if possible, get it not shot like first person view pointing down, have the camera in front. So you're like unboxing like this so you can see the reaction, because you can use that as B-roll with copious amounts of footage. You can put AI voiceover, anything you want over the top of that. That's a must-have, I would recommend. Another one that I would recommend is anything around the lines of, like, one of the things we've done a lot is my secret, it's brand name. So you can put that with anything. You can put that with any USP. If your USP is long-lasting dog toys, you can have something on screen like one long-lasting dog toys cut to UGC content creator saying, my secret, it's brand name. Another USP might be, one dog. I'm really rubbish at thinking of examples on the spot. Want great smelling dog toys. So then your text on screen would be want great smelling dog toys. And then you cut to the same clip, same content creator, my secret, it's brand name. So think about those types of content, real small snippets that you can get that you can use with any type of content, any type of USP. And then you've just got, really, really great options for your library of post-production editing content. Sorry, couldn't miss that one.
That is good. And we will have more on episode 2, which will likely be out 1 week after this one. Stay tuned for it.